I died in a sterile prison hospital, framed for a $40 million fraud by the man I loved. But when I took my final rattling breath, I didn't find peace. I woke up to the smell of expensive Tom Ford cologne and the exact contract that ruined my life. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner of the room sounded like a sledgehammer against my skull. I blinked. Once. Twice. The harsh fluorescent lights of the Rikers Island infirmary were gone. The smell of bleach and impending death had vanished. Instead, my lungs filled with the scent of polished mahogany, fresh espresso, and the unmistakable suffocating aroma of Liam's signature cologne. "Harper, darling, the board is waiting." The voice sent a violent shockwave of ice down my spine. I slowly turned my head. Sitting across from me, at the massive conference table inside the executive suite of the Plaza Hotel, was Liam. He looked exactly as he had 3 years ago. His blonde hair was perfectly styled, his smile radiating that manufactured warmth that had fooled half of Wall Street, and to my eternal shame, me. Next to him sat Victoria, my beloved stepsister. She was wearing the Cartier love bracelet I had bought for her 21st birthday, her eyes wide with feigned innocence, though I could now see the calculating glint of a predator waiting for the trap to snap shut. I looked down at the table. Resting on the pristine leather blotter was a stack of legal documents. At the top of the page, in bold, terrifying print, read, "Transfer of liability and chief executive proxy, Vanguard Holdings." My breath hitched. I knew this document. I knew every cursed syllable printed on this heavy stock paper. In my past life, a life that ended just moments ago in my mind, I had signed this exact contract on this exact day, August 14th. Liam had told me it was a simple tax loophole, a way to protect our assets before our wedding. Because I loved him, because I trusted him implicitly, I didn't read the fine print. I hadn't known that Vanguard Holdings was a massive shell company Liam and Victoria were using to embezzle millions from offshore accounts. 6 months after I signed this paper, the SEC raided our penthouse. Liam stood in front of a federal judge, weeping fake tears, claiming he had no idea his fiancée was running a shadow corporation. Victoria corroborated his story. I was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. I lasted 3 before pneumonia and a broken spirit took my life. "Harper." Liam's voice edged with a hint of irritation, though his smile remained plastered on his face. He slid a heavy black Montblanc pen across the table. It tapped gently against my fingertips. "Just sign on the dotted line, baby. Then we can go celebrate at Le Bernardin. My treat." Victoria leaned forward, placing a manicured hand over Liam's. "Yes, Harp, come on. Liam has worked so hard on this merger. Don't be a bottleneck." A bottleneck. I stared at her hand resting on his. In my previous life, I had thought they were just close friends. Now the intimacy of the gesture made my stomach violently churn. I slowly picked up the Montblanc pen. The metal felt heavy, cold, and heavy with the weight of my impending doom. Liam's shoulders visibly relaxed. A microscopic smirk touched Victoria's lips. They thought they had won. They thought the lamb was walking willingly into the slaughterhouse. But I wasn't the naive, love-sick girl from 3 years ago. I was a ghost who had clawed her way back from a concrete cell. "Vanguard Holdings," I murmured, my voice raspy, sounding foreign even to my own ears. a subsidiary registered in the Cayman Islands, structured specifically to bypass the new SEC regulations on domestic asset capital. Liam's smile faltered, his brow furrowed in genuine confusion. What? Harper, what are you talking about? It's just standard portfolio restructuring, is it? I stood up slowly. My legs were trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer, unadulterated adrenaline flooding my veins. Standard restructuring usually doesn't involve forging my signature on 3 different proxy loans from Deutsche Bank, Liam. The color drained from Liam's face entirely. He shot a panicked look at Victoria, who had suddenly gone perfectly still. Harper, you're not making any sense. Have you been drinking? Liam stood up, reaching his hand out to grab my wrist. Don't touch me, I snapped, my voice echoing off the wood-paneled walls with a ferocity that made him flinch back. My eyes darted across the table. Next to Liam's neat stack of financial reports sat a heavy crystal ashtray and his custom silver Zippo lighter. He had a nervous habit of flicking it during long meetings. Before he could process my words, I reached across the table and grabbed the lighter. Harper, put that down, Victoria said, her voice dropping its sweet facade, revealing the sharp, venomous tone beneath. You are embarrassing yourself. The only embarrassment here is that I ever let either of you breathe my air, I whispered. With a satisfying clink, I flipped open the Zippo. The flame roared to life, casting a flickering, orange glow across the dark room. Without breaking eye contact with the man who had murdered me, I held the flame to the bottom corner of the contract. The thick, expensive paper caught instantly. Are you insane? Liam roared, lunging across the table. I dropped the blazing document directly into the crystal ashtray. The flames ate through the ink, reducing the legal chains that had once bound me to Rikers Island into fragile, grey ashes. Smoke billowed up toward the ceiling, triggering the sweet smoke detector with a piercing shriek. You're a sociopath, Liam. And you. I turned my cold gaze to Victoria, who was coughing and waving smoke away from her face. You two deserve each other. But you are not pinning your $40 million embezzlement on me. The wedding is off. The partnership is dissolved. If you ever contact me again, I will send the SEC a very detailed, anonymous tip regarding your offshore accounts. Leaving them coughing in the smoke-filled room, I turned on my heel and walked out the double mahogany doors. The moment I hit the Fifth Avenue pavement outside the plaza, the reality of what I had just done hit me like a freight train. The warm August air hit my face, and I gasped for breath, leaning against a cold brass railing. I was alive. I was free from the contract. But the war had just begun. Liam was not the type of man to let a piece of paper stop him. He needed a fall guy. The deficit in his company's accounts was already there. He had already stolen the money. If he couldn't pin it on me, he would use his immense wealth, his connections, and his ruthless legal team to destroy me by other means. I was a civilian. He was a billionaire with a network of corrupt politicians in his pocket. I needed a shield. No, I needed a sword. And there was only one man in New York City with enough power, money, and absolute ruthlessness to make Liam tremble. Dominic Reyes. Dominic Reyes was a ghost wrapped in bespoke Italian wool. As the CEO of Reyes Global, he controlled a shipping and tech empire that spanned 3 continents. He was famously reclusive, notoriously unforgiving, and completely untouchable. In my past life, Liam had considered Dominic his white whale. Liam had spent years trying to dismantle Reyes Global. In the timeline I remembered, Liam had ultimately succeeded by paying off Dominic's chief financial officer to leak proprietary algorithms, causing a catastrophic stock crash that nearly ruined the Reyes legacy. Dominic had vanished from the public eye shortly after, a defeated king. But right now, in 2023, Dominic Reyes was still at the height of his terrifying power, and he had no idea there was a traitor sitting in his own boardroom. Getting to Dominic was impossible for a normal person. But I knew where he was going to be tonight. The annual Metropolitan Museum of Art charity gala. It was an event so exclusive that tickets couldn't be bought. They had to be bestowed. I went back to my private apartment, the one Liam didn't have the keys to, and tore through my closet. I found a backless, emerald green silk gown. It was daring, sharp, and commanded attention. I applied my makeup with hands that had stopped shaking. The girl in the mirror looked the same as she always did, but her eyes were different. The soft, trusting warmth had burned away, leaving behind eyes as hard and cold as diamonds. By 9:00 p.m., I was standing outside the towering steps of the Met. Security was tighter than the Pentagon. I didn't have an invitation, but I didn't need one. I waited near the VIP entrance until the ambassador of France arrived, and an older gentleman whose mistress I had helped successfully hide during a PR crisis in my past life. I slipped into his entourage flawlessly, offering the guards a bored, icy stare that screamed, "I belong here." They didn't even check my ID. The gala was a sea of glittering jewels, clinking champagne flutes, and the quiet hum of dangerous amounts of money. I ignored it all, my eyes scanning the room like a sniper. I found him on the Temple of Dender observation deck, away from the throngs of socialites desperate for his attention. Dominic Reyes was leaning against the ancient sandstone, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He was tall, over 6'2", with sharp, aristocratic features that looked like they had been carved from marble. His dark eyes were fixed on the reflection of the city lights on the water. He radiated a cold, isolating aura that kept people at a 10-foot distance. I took a deep breath, smoothing down the silk of my dress, and stepped into his orbit. "It's a beautiful view," I said, my voice steady over the ambient classical music drifting from the main hall. "But it won't look quite as spectacular when your stock plummets by 40% next Tuesday." Dominic didn't startle. He didn't even immediately turn his head. He took a slow sip of his drink, his jaw clenching slightly. Slowly, he shifted his gaze to me. His eyes were the color of a winter night, devoid of any warmth. "Security is supposed to keep the drunk socialites out of this wing," he said, his voice a low, gravelly baritone that vibrated in the quiet air. "Who let you in?" "No one." I stepped closer, stopping exactly 2 feet away from him. "My name is Harper, and I know about the Hudson Yards bid." That got his attention. His eyes narrowed imperceptibly. The Hudson Yards expansion was a completely classified, closed-door bidding war. Nobody outside of his inner circle knew Reyes Global was even involved. "I don't know what you think you know, little girl, but I suggest you walk away before I have you thrown out onto Fifth Avenue," Dominic said, his tone dangerously soft. "Your CFO, Preston Hayes, is compromising your bid as we speak," I fired back, refusing to back down. "He has been receiving wire transfers through a Cayman Islands shell company called Vanguard Holdings. It's owned by Liam. Liam knows exactly what you're bidding, and he's going to undercut you by $2 million at the 11th hour tomorrow." The temperature on the terrace seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dominic completely turned to face me. The sheer predatory presence of the man was suffocating. He took a step toward me, towering over me, his dark eyes piercing straight through my soul. "If this is a corporate espionage play," Dominic whispered, leaning in so close I could smell the sharp scent of cedar and whiskey, "it is a phenomenally stupid one." "How do you know this?" "Because up until 4 hours ago, Liam was my fiancé, and he tried to make me the legal scapegoat for Vanguard Holdings." I held my ground, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. "I have the account numbers, Dominic. I have the routing information. I can prove Preston is a rat. I can give you the exact numbers Liam is submitting tomorrow. I can hand you Liam's head on a silver platter." Dominic stared at me, searching my face for a lie. He was a human lie detector. It was how he built his empire. He saw the desperate, burning rage in my eyes. He saw the truth. "And what do you want in return, Harper?" he asked, testing my name on his tongue. It sounded entirely different when he said it. "Protection," I answered immediately. "Liam is going to realize very quickly that I am a liability. He has the police, the press, and half the city's judges in his pocket. If I walk out of here alone, I'll be dead or in a jail cell by morning. I need the one thing Liam is afraid of to stand between us." "Me," Dominic stated. "Yes." Before Dominic could respond, the heavy glass doors leading to the terrace violently swung open. "Harper!" I spun around. Liam stood in the doorway, his face purple with rage. He was flanked by 2 of his massive private security guards. He had tracked my phone. The mask of the charming golden boy was completely gone, replaced by the panicked, vicious monster I had seen at my trial. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Liam snarled, storming onto the terrace, ignoring Dominic entirely in his blind fury. "You burn a multi-million-dollar contract, disappear, and then I find you here? You're having a psychotic break, Harper. Grab her," he snapped at his guards. "We are going to a hospital." The guards stepped forward. I took a step back, my breath catching in my throat. I had miscalculated. I thought I had more time before he tracked me down. But before the guards could even cross the midpoint of the terrace, Dominic moved. It was terrifyingly fast. Dominic stepped smoothly in front of me, placing his large, tailored frame squarely between me and the 2 approaching walls of muscle. "Take one more step toward her," Dominic said, his voice echoing with absolute lethal authority, "and I will personally ensure you never work in this hemisphere again." The guards froze. They recognized Dominic Reyes. Even Liam's attack dogs knew better than to cross the devil of Wall Street. Liam finally realized who I was standing with. He skidded to a halt, his eyes darting between me and Dominic. A nervous, oily smile forced its way onto his face. "Dominic, Mr. Reyes, I apologize for the interruption. My fiancée she's unwell. She's having a severe mental health crisis. I'm just trying to get her safely home." "Your fiancée?" Dominic repeated. He turned his head slightly, looking at me over his shoulder. The corner of his mouth twitched in what might have been a ghost of a smirk. He turned back to Liam. Suddenly, flashbulbs erupted from the glass doors. The commotion had drawn the attention of the paparazzi and society reporters who had been lurking near the exhibits. Dominic didn't flinch at the cameras. Instead, he reached out, his large, warm hand wrapping firmly around my waist. He pulled me flush against his side. The heat of his body shocked me, but his grip was like an anchor in a hurricane. There seems to be a misunderstanding, Liam. Dominic's voice boomed over the clicking of the cameras, loud enough for every reporter in the room to hear. He looked down at me, his dark eyes glittering with a dangerous, unspoken pact, before looking dead into the lenses of the flashing cameras. Take your hands off my wife. The chaos that erupted in the Metropolitan Museum of Art was instantaneous. Flashbulbs strobed like a lightning storm, capturing Liam's pale, furious face and my own icy resolve. Dominic did not wait for the reporters to hurl their barrage of intrusive questions. His hand remained firmly anchored on my waist, branding me with his heat through the thin emerald silk of my gown, as he effortlessly guided us through the labyrinth of bewildered socialites and out a heavily guarded side exit. A sleek, bulletproof black Maybach was idling at the curb, its engine a low, predatory purr against the humid New York night. The moment the heavy reinforced doors clicked shut, plunging us into the soundproof, tinted sanctuary of the back seat, the suffocating tension finally broke. Dominic poured 2 glasses of scotch from the crystal decanter hidden in the console. He handed me one, his dark, calculating eyes scanning my face in the dim streetlights that filtered through the glass. You played a very dangerous hand tonight, Harper, Dominic said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the leather seats. You used my name to paralyze a billionaire-cornered rat. You promised me Liam's head, but you and I both know Preston Hayes is a cautious man. The routing numbers alone won't hold up in federal court without a physical ledger. I took a slow, burning sip of the scotch. The liquid fire fortified my nerves. I know. Because in the life I lived before I woke up at that Plaza Hotel conference table, Liam's legal team wiped the digital servers clean before the SEC even drafted the warrants. He made sure the digital trail evaporated, leaving only a forged paper trail pointing directly to my personal accounts. Dominic's brow furrowed slightly, his sharp mind analyzing the impossibility of my words. He didn't ask what I meant by the life I lived before. He was a pragmatist. He cared only about actionable intelligence. If the digital servers are destined to be wiped, what leverage do you actually have? He asked, leaning closer. Because I know exactly where the physical servers are housed, I replied, meeting his intense gaze. And I know why Liam needed me to sign that proxy contract. It wasn't just to make me the CEO of his shell company. It was to gain legal control over my grandfather's inheritance. Dominic set his glass down. Harrison's estate. The abandoned property near Bear Mountain. Yes, I nodded, a cold wave of realization washing over me as I connected the final pieces of the puzzle. My grandfather was a notoriously paranoid industrialist. Everyone thought the massive, decaying Gilded Age mansion he left me was nothing but a financial sinkhole. But Liam discovered its true value. Buried 50 feet beneath the decaying floorboards of that mansion is a fully functional, climate-controlled Cold War-era bunker. Dominic's eyes darkened as the strategic implications hit him. An off-grid, untraceable subterranean fortress, perfect for housing illegal server farms and hiding unregistered offshore bearer bonds. Exactly, I whispered. Liam has been using the bunker as the central nervous system for Vanguard Holdings. The proxy contract I burned today would have granted him unhindered legal access to the property. He has his private security surrounding the perimeter, but the biometric lock on the reinforced steel door to the bunker requires my fingerprints. That is why he was desperate to legally commit me to a psychiatric hospital tonight. He was going to incapacitate me, forge the land transfer, and physically extract the servers before the authorities caught a whiff of the embezzlement. A slow, terrifying smile curved Dominic's lips. It was the smile of a wolf that had just found the sheep's hidden grazing pasture. He reached forward and pressed a button on the privacy partition, lowering the glass to speak to his driver. "Change of plans, Brooks," Dominic commanded. "We are not going to the penthouse. Contact the tactical security team. Tell them to prep the helicopters. We are taking a trip to Bear Mountain." By 2 in the morning, the heavy blades of Dominic's private helicopter were cutting through the dense, foggy air above the Hudson Valley. The sprawling silhouette of my grandfather's abandoned mansion loomed out of the darkness like a decaying Gothic ghost. "Liam's security team has been monitoring my phone," I warned Dominic as we touched down in a clearing a half-mile from the property gates. The moment I stepped out of the city limits, it triggered an alert. He knows I am here, and he knows his entire empire is buried under this dirt. "Let him come," Dominic said, racking the slide of a sleek, black sidearm before slipping it into his shoulder holster. "He is walking into a graveyard." The soul, air inside the mansion, tasted of dust, rot, and decades of neglect. Dominic's tactical team, moving with terrifying, silent precision, had already neutralized the 2 perimeter guards Liam had stationed in the overgrown gardens. We descended the crumbling stone stairs into the sprawling wine cellar. Behind a false wall of ancient, empty oak casks lay the heavy, reinforced steel blast door. I pressed my trembling hand against the biometric scanner. A green light flashed, followed by the heavy hydraulic hiss of the pressurized locks disengaging. The bunker was a stark contrast to the decaying mansion above. It was a sterile, brightly lit cavern filled with rows of humming black servers and stacks of heavy metal lockboxes. This was the beating heart of Liam's corrupt empire. Dominic's lead tech operative immediately jacked into the main terminal, beginning the massive data extraction required to formally legally execute Preston Hayes and freeze Liam's offshore assets. 10 minutes to full encryption bypass, Mr. Reyes, the operative announced over the hum of the cooling fans. Suddenly, a loud, concussive boom echoed from the ceiling above us. The bunker's reinforced walls vibrated. "They breached the main floor," Dominic's head of security barked through the comms. "It's a heavy assault team. Liam is with them, and he is armed." "Hold the choke point at the cellar stairs," Dominic ordered, his voice devoid of any panic. He turned to me, pushing me behind the heavy barricade of a server rack. "Stay down, Harper. Do not move." The ensuing firefight sounded like a thunderstorm tearing through the house. The heavy thud of boots echoing on the stone stairs signaled that Liam's desperate mercenaries were pushing through the defense. The heavy blast door of the bunker swung violently inward. Liam stood in the doorway, his designer suit torn, his face smeared with ash and completely twisted in a manic, rabid desperation. He held a high-caliber handgun, his eyes sweeping the room until they locked onto the glowing download progress bar on the main terminal. "Stop the download!" Liam screamed, leveling his weapon. Everything happened in a terrifying fraction of a second. Liam's finger squeezed the trigger just as Dominic lunged across the open aisle to intercept him. The deafening crack of the gunshot bounced off the steel walls, ringing in my ears with a high-pitched, agonizing whine. Dominic violently tackled Liam, sending both men crashing into a wall of lockboxes. Liam's gun clattered across the concrete floor. Dominic landed a brutal, sickening strike to Liam's jaw, knocking him instantly unconscious. But as Dominic stood up, I saw the dark, horrifying stain spreading across the crisp white fabric of his dress shirt, just beneath his collarbone. "Dominic!" I screamed, scrambling out from behind the servers. He swayed heavily, his hand clamping over the gunshot wound. "The data!" he grunted, his knees buckling. "The data is secured. The FBI is 3 minutes out," the tech operative shouted, rushing over to help me lower Dominic to the concrete floor. The next hour was a blur of flashing red and blue lights, screaming sirens, and the terrifying metallic scent of blood. The medevac helicopter rushed us straight to the Level 1 Trauma Center at New York Presbyterian Hospital. The moment the stretcher burst through the double doors of the emergency department, the atmosphere shifted into a symphony of controlled chaos. It felt like a war zone, mirroring the intense, high-stakes military triage protocols I had seen executed at Walter Reed. "We need a massive transfusion protocol. Stat!" the lead trauma surgeon yelled, his voice cutting through the noise. "Gunshot wound to the upper right thorax. Breath sounds are diminished on the right side. We have a tension pneumothorax. Get me a chest tube tray and prep an OR immediately." Nurses and residents swarmed Dominic, moving with brilliant, practiced efficiency. They cut away his ruined shirt, shouting vitals and drawing blood, while a terrifyingly large needle was inserted into his chest to relieve the pressure in his lungs. The sharp hiss of escaping air was followed instantly by the erratic, rapid beeping of the cardiac monitor. "Pressure is dropping, 80/50. Push 2 units of O negative." I stood frozen behind the red tape on the floor, my hands coated in the blood of the man who had just risked everything to save me. The sterile, blinding lights of the intensive care unit felt like a terrifying judgment. I had been reborn to seek revenge, but I never intended to drag an innocent king down with me. Hours bled into a torturous eternity in the cold waiting room. Federal agents came and went, informing me that Liam and Victoria had been apprehended at the estate. The server data provided undeniable proof of their $40 million fraud, corporate espionage, and now attempted murder. The contract that ruined my first life was nothing compared to the ironclad federal indictment that was about to ruin theirs forever. Finally, as dawn broke over the New York skyline, Dr. Montgomery, the chief of surgery, walked through the swinging doors. He pulled off his surgical cap, offering a tired but reassuring smile. "The bullet missed the subclavian artery by millimeters," Dr. Montgomery said gently. "The chest tube stabilized his lung, and we repaired the tissue damage. He is in the ICU, heavily sedated, but he is going to make a full recovery." A sob of pure, unadulterated relief broke free from my throat. When they finally allowed me into his dimly lit ICU room, the rhythmic, steady beep of the heart monitor was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Dominic looked pale, a network of IV lines trailing from his arms, but he was alive. As I sat in the chair beside his bed, I gently took his large, warm hand in mine. His eyelids fluttered, heavy with medication, before slowly opening. His dark eyes found mine, the coldness gone, replaced by a fierce, undeniable bond forged in fire and blood. Heart weakly squeezed my fingers, his voice barely a raspy whisper through the oxygen mask. "I told you," he breathed, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "Nobody touches my wife." Did this story of corporate betrayal, hidden bunkers, and ruthless revenge keep you on the edge of your seat? If you loved watching Harper rise from the ashes to conquer her enemies with the formidable Dominic Reyes by her side, please hit that like button, share this video with your fellow drama lovers, And do not forget to subscribe to our channel for more thrilling, high-stakes, real-life audio stories. Ring the notification bell so you never miss an exciting update.